Hi everybody, this is Carlos. Welcome to geekfinance.org. Today we'll be talking about plain vanilla interest rate swaps. Please visit geekfinance.org if you would like to download today's PowerPoint, as well as other resources such as spreadsheet templates, problems, and more. As always, our first slide contains today's formulas and definitions to make them easier for you to find in the future. So, what is an interest rate swap? A swap is a contract by which two companies agree to exchange a series of cash flows referenced by a fixed or floating rate to a predetermined notional principal. What does this mean? Well, in this diagram, we can see that Limones Incorporated is willing to pay Renegados LLC a 1.5 interest payment on the notional principal that is established here at $10 million. Likewise, Renegados is willing to pay Limones the 3.5% interest payment on the same notional principal. But why would a company agree to something like this? Well, as you will see shortly, it's because it's in their best interest. One possible reason for doing this is that the cash flows they exchange are in different currency. Imagine Limones was receiving a $10 million cash flow every year from their operations in the United States, but had interest payments due in euros. They might want to protect themselves against dollar devaluation by finding a company willing to swap euros at today's rate. Luckily, their investment bank finds another company interested in swapping euros for dollars. We will do a currency swap problem in another video. Another reason that another company might want to swap interest rates is because they want to change floating rate to a fixed rate or vice versa. By using a swap, they can do this more efficiently than if they do this on their own. This is known as a plain vanilla swap, and we're going to see it by solving the following problem. Limones Incorporated with a high credit quality can borrow capital at a 5% fixed rate or at a floating rate of LIBOR plus 1.5%. Limones wishes to access a floating rate to take advantage of the lower cost of capital. Renegados LLC, which has a lower credit quality, can borrow at a floating rate of LIBOR plus 2%, but can only access the fixed rate at 8%. Renegados fears a spike in interest rates and is looking to lock into a fixed rate. What will be each company's net cost of debt if they choose to enter in a plain vanilla swap? So I'm going to start solving this problem by building a spreadsheet in Excel where I can start recording all the information. I wrote down the notional principal and the current LIBOR. Let's assume it's at 2.5%. Limones Incorporated is going to get the fixed rate loan, and so Limones is going to be making interest payments to their creditors for 5% every year. So year 1 that's 5%, year 2 paying 5% interest, year 3 paying 5% interest. On the other side, Renegados is going to get the floating rate loan, and so they're going to be paying LIBOR, which is currently 2.5%, plus 2 to their creditors. That's a total of 4.5% every year. Note that LIBOR may change at any time, so if it increases next year by 1%, Renegados will pay 5.5% for that year. But the companies have entered into a plain vanilla swap, and the swap is going to generate some cash flows of its own. Limones has agreed to paying Renegados' floating rate portion, which is LIBOR. Note that Limones will not pay the fixed part of Renegados' rate of 2%, only the 2.5% LIBOR. So every year, in addition to their fixed rate loan of 5%, Limones pays Renegados an additional 2.5%, or whatever LIBOR happens to be that year. Renegados, in turn, has agreed to pay Limones' fixed rate, which is 5%. So, in addition to their floating rate loan of 4.5%, Renegados will pay Limones an additional 5%. When you add the cash flows and look at their net position, you can notice two things. First, Limones has effectively gone from a fixed rate to a variable one, because they are now paying Renegados whatever LIBOR happens to be. But their fixed interest payments are covered by the cash flow generated by the swap. So they pay a 5% interest, but Renegados pays them a 5% interest rate. and they're just left with a 2.5% floating rate payment. Renegados, on the other hand, has effectively gone from a floating rate to a fixed rate. They are still paying their floating rate interest payments, but these are compensated by the cash flow generated by the swap. So if LIBOR goes up by 1%, the cash flow from the swap goes up by 1%, canceling it out. And the second thing that you will notice is that if you add up all the cash flows, the net position is lower than it would have been if each company had looked for financing in the market individually. Limones could have borrowed at a floating rate of 4% and now is borrowing at a rate of just 2.5%. And Renegados could have financed itself at a fixed rate of 8%, but thanks to the use of the swap, it is now financing itself at 7%. And this is all I have for you on this subject. Check out geekfinance.org to find more videos on accounting, finance, investments, and more, as well as other resources such as spreadsheet templates and problems and solutions. Study hard, guys.